Hello, my beautiful blossoms, blooms, and buds, and welcome to take 2 of Thousand Autumns Book 3, Part 5. I'm Rosebud Reads, and welcome to my book garden, my very festive holiday book garden. All right, the weather is much better today, so I'm hoping that means we will not have another blackout. But we will have to see. I'm gonna give it a minute for everyone to get here, but I'll do my little spiel while I wait. This is a chill stream. That means that I will be talking to my lovely, lovely chat. I will be talking to myself. I will be talking to the book. If that's not your flavor, that's completely okay. You're a little far into the book for that decision to be made, but I still believe it can be made at any time. Maybe stick around, see if you like it. You never know. Hello, Chichi Kiki. Hello, Annika. Hello, Dai. I don't know if you're still here, Dai. Thank you. They're my fun holiday earrings. So I like them. Give it a little flair. Thank you. Oh, give me a sec. I've got literally just a second. I've got something cool to show you guys. I almost forgot these arrived today. Oh yeah, I'm not sponsored, but 7Cs if you ever wanna. I highly doubt they'll ever sponsor me, but that's okay. We can dream. Free books? Yes, please. So I am super excited. Both to give this a round 2 attempt, but also because during my holiday shopping for gifts and weird obscure things, I happened to find some new MDZS merch. They are so cute. I'm going to show them in the box and then I'm going to take them out. They are so tiny. Look at them. They are little baby. They are so cute. They're chubby baby. Literally babies. Here's where Wuxian. Little baby. He's got like he's so small. Like this is him in my hand. Like he's tiny. And then Lemonji's face is so precious too. I love it. His little ribbon. They gave him an extra long ribbon in the back too for his little face. But look at his little face. He's a sleepy boy. Here, I'll turn off the green so you can actually see. Look at his little face. Oh my god, they're so cute. And of course, we'll show them together. The babies. Love it. They're so dopey. So they actually get a special little case because they're so cute. Here we go. Ta-da! Now they'll be together. They're seriously so tiny. I love it. That way they won't get lost. Okay. thank you guys for coming back after the fiasco of Tuesday. We love us some small boys. We do. That's where my jacket went. Okay. We do love us some small boys. Okay. We'll turn back on the green. How's everyone doing? Hopefully nobody else had a blackout. Is staying nice and warm. You know what? I'm gonna pop this one on because it's nice and cozy. Oh, fuzzy. Much better. But yeah. Nothing like spontaneous weather to ruin plans. That being said, it did mess with my book schedule because I planned it out perfectly so that we would end this on the new year. Or end this before the new year. So that means we have a choice. And this is all of you get to decide because you're here. Do we want to do an additional stream on Saturday, or do we want to do an additional stream on Monday? Because I want to finish this before the new year. Are people available Monday? Because that's what works better for me, but I am willing to do a Sunday stream. Monday? Chi-Chi Kiki? Okay. How does everyone else feel about Monday? Because that way we can start book 4 on the 1st. Literally the new year. If I'm getting the day right. Let me double check. Okay. I feel you there, Annika. I mean, we'll still do our Tuesday. And then that Thursday is when the whole Days of Fickmas will start. So crazy to think it's so close. So literally in a week, Days of Fickmas start. But yeah. Okay, so tentatively, actually, we're just gonna say it, Monday. We'll stream Monday and Tuesday next week, and then Days of Fickmas will start Thursday. I'll make a note, kind of like what Kickter does about the schedule, since it's so different this week, and next week's going forward. But no, and then we'll start up on the 5th. We'll start up on the 5th. There we go. Or no, the New Year's Day is Thursday. We'll start up on the 1st. What am I saying? Okay. I'm confusing myself now. I apparently can't read a calendar correctly. We'll do book 4 on the 1st, so the new year. Again, I will post this in a schedule, like in the posts. There. So, okay. Anybody got anything new to add from the past few days? If not, I will get out a Post-it so I can do timestamps, and we will go ahead and get started. Right? A good way to start the new year. And watch, it'll be an absolutely horrendous, like, war crime of a chapter. Just watch. And I'll have to censor it again. Or put trigger warnings in. Oh my goodness. Speaking of jinxing myself, this morning I started the day off right by totally biting it and falling like flat out like a cartoon as I was walking from the parking lot into work, and had my energy water in my hand in a just like a travel container, and it burst open, and I just watched my energy drink like float away, and I was like, we haven't even gotten in the building yet. So thankfully that was not an indication of the rest of the day, but it sure was an interesting start, right? Yeah. I was okay. I just was like, what a way to trip into the day. It's like, good start, good start. Should we just turn around and go home at that point? Oh yeah. It got better from there. It was fine. It was just like, is this how the day's gonna go? No, it was fine. I just was like, really? Really? Okay. All right. Let's get started. Or let's get restarted. I'm 50-50 of leaving the other post up, because we didn't really get anywhere with it. So I think I'll probably delete the other chapter 5. And just leave this one. But yeah. All right. Let's start at 11:30. All right. Chapter 71, The Real Yan Wushi. Yan Wushi's current situation was 100 times more troublesome than Shen Qiao's had been back then. Oh yeah, so Yan Wushi was like chi deviating, and was fighting Shen Qiao ferociously, and Shen Qiao kind of is thinking, oh my gosh, is this another manifestation of a personality? So he hits his acupoints, and then Yan Wushi collapses, and he rushes forward to feel his pulse and realize that Yan Wushi's internal, despite himself, Shen Qiao quickly undid his acupoint. But the moment he did, Yan Wushi abruptly seized Shen Qiao's neck, and then he threw himself closer and bit down on his lips. In pain, Wushi's neck, and struck hard. The other man fell limply on top of him. It was finally quiet. Shen Qiao let out a sigh of relief. He picked up Yan Wushi's wrist and felt it, and let out a gasp of surprise. If the man had just been in the throes of a chi deviation earlier, then now, only a short time later, his pulse had completely calmed. In contrast, his life force even seemed to be thriving? Okay, so that was the last chapter. Now we start chapter 71. The Real Yan Wushi. Yan Wushi's current situation was 100 times more troublesome than Shen Qiao's own had been back then. Shen Qiao might have fallen from a cliff and sustained grave injuries, then been plagued with lingering illnesses, but that was due to joyful reunions, poison flaring up in his body. His damaged meridians had since been repaired by the Shuyang strategy's true chi, and the remnant poison from joyful reunion had also dissolved when he destroyed his martial arts. Though his eyes were still affected and hadn't fully recovered, the Shuyang strategy had already rebuilt his foundations. He had to completely relearn his martial arts, but all the disastrous factors within him were gone. But that wasn't true for Yan Wushi. The flaw in his demonic core had been there from the beginning. It was an innate problem. Guang Lingsan had even discovered it and exploited it using an ambush together with the other experts. He'd aggravated the flaw, and when combined with that head injury, Yan Wushi's entire body's meridians and internal breathing had fallen into disorder. This in turn affected his state of mind, causing massive changes to his personality. Therefore, they had to heal at least 3 things before he could recover. One was his head injury, which was no longer a problem now that they had the Jade Sistanch. Second was to sort out his meridians, and third was to patch the demonic core. The second and third were interlinked. Fixing one would fix the other. Each day the flaw remained unrepaired was a day with the risk of qi deviation or disordered meridians. And the problem was that his meridians would also impede the recovery of his martial arts. Currently, the pulse Shen Qiao was feeling might not be indicative of Yan Wushi's true situation. Rather, it could be a sign of calm without and a storm within. But it was at least a good start. After all, Yan Wushi was a blessed genius. Since he'd said that the silk piece could repair the flaw in his demonic core, it must be true. It was only a matter of time and effectiveness. Shen Qiao laid him flat on the bed, then pulled a white item out of his sleeve. This was the jade cistanche that Shai Ling had given him back in Ruoqiang's ancient capital. The cuts the apes had left Shen Qiao then were mostly healed, so he'd never consumed it. Though the jade cistanche could regulate qi and ease breathing, since he now had the assistance of Shu Yang Strategy's true qi, it wasn't too useful for him. Shen Qiao held the cistanche in his hand, then brought over an empty cup. With a squeeze, the cistanche's powder streamed down from between his fingers. Soon it filled half the cup, and he added some warm water. Then he gripped Yan Wushi's chin and pried his mouth open before pouring in the cistanche water mixture. This object was exalted for its curative powers, so naturally it possessed some miraculous effects. Even the imperial palaces normally wouldn't have any. One had to go somewhere beneath the Gobi Desert like Ruoqiang's ancient city to find one. That it was precious went without saying. Those apes feeding on them year in and year out had been granted incredible strength, and over the years they'd even developed intelligence. That was why they'd been the martial artists' match in battle. At that time, Yan Wushi had plucked 4 fruits and discarded the rest in order to threaten Chen Gong. Afterward, he'd eaten 2 himself, then given Shen Qiao one. He probably didn't imagine that, in the end, that last fruit would still end up being used on himself. If it had been anyone else, even if eating it themselves would have little effect, they probably still wouldn't have given it to another person for free. After he drank the jade cistanche water mixture, Yan Wushi's complexion really did improve quite a bit. Shen Qiao put down the cup and returned to meditating. At the same time, he pondered the matters concerning the Shu Yang strategy. The Shu Yang strategy had 5 volumes in total, and one of those was related to the martial arts from the demonic discipline. It was also precisely the contents of that piece of silk that Yan Wushi had seized from Chen Gong. Shen Qiao had read it as well. Being only a couple thousand characters, it was concise yet profound, and the entire thing was a commentary on Riyue sect's martial arts in the past. There wasn't any point in Shen Qiao spending more time on it, since he cultivated a Taoist core. It had nothing to do with him. Of the remaining 4 volumes that concerned the martial arts of the 3 schools, Shen Qiao had read 2. One of them was from his venerable master, Qi Fingwei, and the other inside Shuyun Temple. He recited the latter personally before everyone, then Yan Wushi had destroyed it. As for the 2 final volumes, one was hidden within Shou's inner palace, and the other was in Tiantai sect. Due to the Shu Yang strategy's reputation, everyone believed it to be the most wondrous book in the world, and they all vied to see it. Back then, Du Yanshan had managed to attain the whereabouts of one scroll, so he ordered Deputy Leader Yun Fuyi to purchase it from its owner, then bring it back to him under the pretense of escorting cargo. Who could have known that Yan Wushi would intercept and eventually end up destroying it? As a result, Du Yanshan hated Yan Wushi to the bone, so him joining in the ambush wasn't strange either. Anyone else would agree that Yan Wushi's actions deserve that kind of hate. However, though many people knew the Shu Yang strategy to be great, they didn't actually know how it was great. They even assumed that some kind of peerless martial arts must be recorded within, where practicing it would make you number one in the world. Even Qi Fengui of the past and Yan Wushi in the present had been unable to decipher it completely. Only after Shen Qiao lost his martial arts did he understand what was wondrous about the Shu Yang strategy: the ability to reconstruct foundations. The Shu Yang strategy's true Qi integrated the strengths of the three schools, so its practitioners started out a level higher than anyone else. Their breadth of vision were entirely different. Not sure about that tense use, but we're going to continue. Due to this, the level of their future achievements would naturally differ as well. However, even if numerous martial experts realized this, they still wouldn't throw away their martial arts to start over with the Shu Yang strategy. Furthermore, those who had already read the Shu Yang strategy would become attached to it, so most of them wouldn't readily share it with others. Hence, when one took into account the entire world, the number of people who could truly understand the Shu Yang strategy's essence would probably be in the single digits. Currently, it was as if Shen Qiao were standing halfway up a mountain. There, he had a sense of how vast the world was, that nothing was impossible. But he was still inferior to someone standing at the mountain summit. Each of the Shu Yang strategy's volumes were complete and independent books by themselves, but ultimately they were still connected to each other. So right now, he'd sometimes practice to a certain point and find that he didn't understand, that he couldn't find the answer, leaving him to fumble around on his own. Perhaps, once he finished reading the other two volumes, this situation would be completely turned around. The scroll hidden within Shou's inner palace was still feasible. With how their previous meeting went, Yuan Yang might be willing to lend it to him. But Tian Tai sects was much more difficult. The Buddhist and Taoist sects couldn't really be considered friendly with one another. The world sects were still fighting for dominance. Each supported their own enlightened ruler as they fought without end. Tian Tai sect could never lend their treasure to an unrelated person without a good reason. Shen Qiao pondered this until it was past midnight, and he unknowingly grew drowsy, falling into a shallow sleep. Only once dawn's light broke through the early morning sky did he fully awaken. He hadn't slept deeply, but Shen Qiao had followed Taoist practices from childhood, so he'd always been disinterested in worldly matters. He'd never met with any insurmountable obstacles and resolved to carry a clear conscience always. This naturally meant that he never spent days plagued with worry, so even if his sleep had been shallow, it was still restful. That's nice. All right, that is the second chirp chirp I've heard. I'm going to now turn off this like I should have before. Apologize. It's not one thing, it's the other. It was just that his past disinterest had carried a slight naivete. However, after experiencing all sorts of ups and downs, this naivete had also gradually subsided. While he still treated people with the same naked sincerity, he also slowly learned to differentiate people's thoughts and intentions. Thus, he was no longer so easily deceived. Even before he opened his eyes, he could sense when a gaze from the bed landed upon him. He already knew who it was without looking, but he didn't know which personality would be awakening within him this time. If he was as violent as the previous night, Shen Qiao would have to knock him unconscious again. Then he might as well rent a carriage and toss him inside before continuing their journey. That would save him a great deal of trouble, too. Shen Qiao's thoughts turned quickly, and he slowly opened his eyes. They weren't far from each other. He could see the expression on the other man's face. But Yan Wushi's face was unruffled, his eyes unreadable. His heart gave a thump. Sect leader Yan? He asked. He didn't feel particularly happy. Yan Wushi smiled, his manner thoughtful. Why, you don't seem a little unhappy. Oh, why? You seem a little unhappy to see me. Shen Qiao's eyelids drooped a little. Not at all. These women's clothes I have on. You put them on me, didn't you? Urgent matters require unorthodox methods, said Shen Qiao. This also saves us from much scrutiny and will help sect leader Yan return to Chang'an sooner. Yan Wushi didn't seem to mind. He even touched the bun on his head, then his sleeves, with great interest. Then he said to Shen Qiao, if you're going to use a disguise, make it a good one. Most women have long fingernails, and even if they don't, they'll paint them. Otherwise, the moment an observant person sees how prominent my knuckles are, they'll immediately know that I'm a man disguised as a woman. The corner of Shen Qiao's mouth twitched as he thought, how am I supposed to know something like that? I've never disguised myself as one before. Wow, imagine you finally recover your true personality and people are like, darn. Right, Annika? Be like, well, shit, okay. But what he said was, sect leader Yan is right. If you'd like some nail paint, I can purchase some for you. Yan Wushi raised an eyebrow and smiled. You seem rather unwilling to talk to me. What's wrong? Shai Ling is but a fragment of my soul, yet you favor him so much and treat him so gently. But when it's me, you're so blunt instead. Could Ah Qiao have forgotten which one is the real Yan Wushi? When Shen Qiao had made his decision to save Yan Wushi, he hadn't done it to make him repent, and certainly not to win his gratitude. Who could have known that Yan Wushi's personality would fracture? Him meeting Shai Ling and Yan had been entirely unexpected. Otherwise, he didn't wish to get involved with this person at all. Best if he could never see his face again. He eagerly anticipated it. Shai Ling is Shai Ling, Yan Wushi is Yan Wushi. No matter what happens, I could never dare to forget sect leader Yan, Shen Qiao said coolly. Yan Wushi's gaze landed on his wounded lip, and he laughed in surprise. What, did Shai Ling even forget how to kiss someone after losing most of my memories? He was so impatient he even bit you? Only with this reminder did Shen Qiao become aware of a slight pain in his lip. But as he'd never been good at sarcastic retorts, he simply remained silent and refused to answer. Yan Wushi didn't seem to mind. Instead, he continued while smiling. Since we found the piece of silk, the day my flaw in my demonic core is repaired will soon arrive. I truly must thank you for this. If you hadn't brought me to Ruoqiang, I could never have obtained that silk from Chang'an. Ah Qiao, you repaying evil with virtue has even made me a little resentful about delivering you to Sun Jingsing that day. He really is quite an asshole. Like, what a dick. Like, wow. He said he was remorseful, but his tone didn't carry the slightest bit of remorse at all. This was the real Yan Wushi. With his character and actions, even if he owed the entire world, he still would never feel any remorse. Even if they turned back time, he'd make the exact same choice in order to force out Shen Qiao's last uncrossable line. In the end, it was as Yan Wushi said. He didn't need friends, only opponents. And the opponent had to be his equal, someone capable of standing shoulder to shoulder with him. Everything else had been Shen Qiao's miscalculations and his own wishful thinking. How could Shen Qiao not understand this point by now? So he didn't respond to Yan Wushi's words and instead asked about important matters. Once we leave the royal capital for the Central Plains, the risk of your identity being exposed grows greater. With your current level of cultivation, you probably don't wish to confront the likes of Buddhist master Shu Ting head on, at least for now. Right now, everyone's brows are pointed at you. You're surrounded by enemies on all sides. If you are discovered, you'll be beset by endless troubles. But the journey back to Chang'an won't be a short one. So what do you plan to do? Yan Wushi could see the lack of interest in his expression. It was obvious that Shen Qiao didn't wish to follow his digressions. But that freshly injured lip ruined his aesthetic impression a little. Like the statue of an immortal that had been stained with the dust of the secular world. Yan Wushi immediately found it entertaining and continued his mockery. You have no connection with Northern Shou. Surely a single meeting with Yuan Yang isn't enough for you to willingly stand by him and help me. Let me guess, perhaps you've harbored some secret feelings for me since long ago. Then I broke your heart by handing you to Sun Jingsing, but you couldn't let go of those old feelings, and Shai Ling's appearance rekindled them. You even had me wear a woman's outfit. Maybe you wanted to take advantage of the times where I'm delirious in order to do something irreversible to me, so as to make me pledge myself to you. Even with Shen Qiao keeping a serious demeanor, Yan Wushi's narcissistic comments still left him reeling and at a loss. If sect leader Yan is unwilling to discuss the important things, then I can just knock you unconscious and deliver you to Chang'an that way. It does not make a difference to me. Yan Wushi sputtered a laugh. All right. Don't be mad. We won't head straight back to Chang'an. Wei province first. He'd always been capricious. In the past, during his good moods, it wasn't uncommon to see him beaming or coaxing others tenderly. Shen Qiao frowned. Why? Like you said, my martial arts have yet to recover, and my reappearance would be far too ostentatious. The Liu He Guild, the Buddhist, Huan sect, Fa Jing sect, even the Cognate, all of them want me dead. You won't be able to protect me with your current abilities. And whose fault is that? Thought Shen Qiao. You have enemies everywhere, and that's not something everyone can pull off. If not for my concern over the big picture, which prevents me from picking a bone with you, I too would have joined the ranks of people trying to kill you. Valid. Yan Wushi couldn't hear his silent criticism, but Shen Qiao's expression betrayed his thoughts. Yan Wushi found this greatly amusing. He stared at him for a long while, then finally asked, Has there been any news from Chang'an? I heard that the Northern Shou army marched right in without a challenge. Northern Shi didn't have the strength to resist. If everything went as expected, they should have already taken Yichang. Yan Wushi made a sound of agreement. I've arranged for some people to stay by Yuan Yang. He should be fine for the time being. If something does happen, we won't make it in time, even if we rush there now. Huan Yue sect has an official residence in Wei province. Let's stop there first, then find a way to send a message to Chang'an. Since he'd already decided, Shen Qiao didn't object. Then you rest for a while first, he said. Where are you going? To buy you nail paint. For the first time in his life, Yan Wushi was rendered speechless. Ooh, little sass right there. The two of them stayed in Tu Yuhun's capital for a few days before setting off for Northern Shou. Before they left, Shen Qiao had secretly taken a trip to Bana's house. We'd love to see it. We, of course, love to see it. Chen Gong had kept his promise. Her grandfather truly had returned. Grandfather and grandchild were both safe and sound. Only then did Shen Qiao's heart settle down, and he quietly turned and left. Yan Wushi's personality still showed signs of instability, but his mind was clear more often. Shen Qiao noticed that the first personality to be reintegrated was the violent one that attacked at the first hint of disagreement. The other three personalities rarely came out during the day, but they'd alternate showing up at night. In other words, during the daytime, Yan Wushi was no different from his past self. However, whenever Shai Ling emerged, he always showed great dependence on Shen Qiao, to the point that he refused to sleep the entire night in favor of watching him. This was something the original Yan Wushi had no control over. Hence, Yan Wushi spent most of his daytimes rather fatigued, and he often needed to meditate for rest. In early February, they arrived at the capital of Wei Province, and the crisis, too, had quietly crept closer. Okay, chapter 72. It'll be like 36:30 by the time I'm done taking a sip. Chapter 72, Wei Province Capital. Wei Province had been established during the Northern Wei dynasty. It was located at the source of the Wei River, hence the name Wei Province. In reality, the seat of its local government was called Xiangwu, but everyone had long gotten used to associating it with the Wei River, so they referred to it as Wei Province Capital. The city couldn't compare with Chang'an, but it was still a city of strategic importance for the western areas. If war broke out between Northern Shou and Tuyuhun, it would be at the front lines. Still, this danger didn't exist for the time being. Spring had yet to arrive, and the weather hadn't warmed, which meant fewer traveling merchants. So Wei Province's capital was as calm and tranquil as ever. Early in the morning, Ah Qing walked to the entrance holding a broom. It just snowed yesterday, so naturally he had to clear it properly, otherwise Uncle Wu would definitely slip and fall when he went out for groceries later. He hummed an off-key tune that only he could follow, thinking that he had to quickly clear away the snow. He also needed to head to the backyard and check if that orange cat was there. The last couple of days, it often run into the woodshed to hide from the cold. If it was there, he'd bring it something to eat. Oh, that was sweet. After the heavy snowfall yesterday, the entrance was unsurprisingly blanketed in a thick layer of snow. Sometimes mounds of snow would slide from the roofs with a soft splat. At this time, Ah Qing had already given the courtyard a thorough sweep. There was a faint sheen of sweat over his skin, but he didn't feel cold, just a little breathless. He stopped to rest for a while. He automatically looked up and saw two people walking towards him from the street. Ah Qing first noticed the man in blue. He was still a distance away, so he couldn't see his face clearly, but just his movements and demeanor gave off the aura of someone extraordinary. Ah Qing found it hard to find a fitting word to describe him. He could only think of the cold rice pudding he often ate during the summer. Snow white and translucent, cool and refreshing. Just looking at it would give him a sense of indescribable soothing, let alone finishing it. As the man walked over, he realized that his association with cool rice pudding was truly most fitting. Ah Qing had never seen such a handsome man before. For a moment he was stunned, still staring, until he noticed that those two people were walking towards him, getting closer and closer. Only then did he quickly return to himself. I love the fact that his first thought when seeing Shen Qiao was rice pudding, like cool rice pudding. And then when Shen Qiao got closer, he was like, absolutely cool rice pudding. Like, he did not backtrack at all. He doubled down, and I love that. I I hope there's fan art where it just draws like Shen Qiao rice pudding, or it's like just in a fancy bowl, like and just like a bamboo stick, like just like leaning against it or sticking out of it. Like that would be amazing. Right? So pretty. Cool rice pudding. No, the man carrying the long cloth bag walked up to him, cupping his hands at Ching. May I ask if this is the Shi residence? Or Shai residence? In the past, Ching would have definitely replied. The words Shy residence are right up there and real big too. Are you blind? Can't you read? Why ask the obvious? But he didn't say those caustic words. He even blushed instead. His usual witty speech seemed to have flown away. He actually stammered, but I don't know you. Is this young gentleman also a member of this residence? The man asked politely with a smile. Ching felt like half of the bones in his body had gone limp. Right at that moment, a sneer came from beside the man in blue. Qiao, if you're going to ask that slowly, when will we finally get our answer? Just call Lao Wu out. Tell him that his master has returned. Only then did Ching pay attention to the woman in yellow who had accompanied the man in blue. She wore a veil so he couldn't see her face. However, most women near the border were slender. Well, slender couldn't really be used to describe this lady at all. She pretty much possessed the height and figure of a man, which was truly a rare sight. On top of that, though her voice wasn't unpleasant, it also lacked the mellow gentleness common to women. Ching was bewildered for a moment. Did you make a mistake? We don't have a master here. The Lord of Shy Residence left to travel a couple of years ago, and he's yet to return. Shen Qiao was about to inquire further when he saw Yan Wushi toss the youth something. Ching caught it and looked down. It was a piece of yellow jade less than half the size of his palm, but the engravings upon it were exquisite. The bright moon cast over cassia branches together with the mist-cloaked Kulun Mountains. Give it to Wu Mi and have him come see me, said the woman, who wasn't like a woman at all. Ching suddenly shivered. Remembering what Uncle Wu had told him before, he realized just who the person standing before him was. He turned without another word and ran inside, closing the gates in the process and locking Shen Qiao and Yan Wushi outside. Love it. We have a picture. Love to see it. Here's the full picture. And then we zoom in on the faces. Yan Wushi does not like how nice Shen Qiao is being to this boy. He is pissed. But his nails look nice. Love the hairdo. And of course, Shen Qiao is like, hello, small friend. Yep. He's rocking it. He looks great. Right? They really are nice. He was surprisingly vigilant, but as he lacked the proper training, his various actions would only look childish in the eyes of others. The two of them stood outside for a long time before the gates opened once more. An old man of around 60 years came out, the youth from before following behind him. The old man's gaze swept past Shen Qiao and landed on Yan Wushi, still wearing his veil. Master? He asked doubtfully. Yan Wushi gave him a sound of confirmation. Only one sound, but it was unmistakable to the old man. He was so overjoyed he almost rushed forward to bow, but after taking a couple of steps, he managed to restrain himself and quickly let them. Oh my gosh. He managed to restrain himself and quickly let them inside instead. Hello, Esper lady. Welcome. Oh, you just missed the picture. Esper lady, welcome. Oh, you just missed the picture. So, Yan Wushi is in disguise right now. And let me tell you, he's slaying. Like, he is killing it. He's also kind of pissed. But that's more at the person manning the door right now. How you doing, Esper lady? Only one sound, but it was unmistakable to the old man. He was so overjoyed he almost rushed forward to bow, but after taking a couple of steps, he managed to restrain himself and quickly let them inside instead. Come in, we can talk afterwards. Ching followed behind Uncle Wu and scrutinized the two people curiously. Doing great. We are reading Volume 1 for a book club, and it's crazy to go back. Have fun. He wasn't from Huan Yue's sect, but an orphan whom Uncle Wu had taken in from a young age. Since then, he stayed inside his small house to keep Uncle Wu company and help him with housekeeping. Uncle Wu hadn't told him much, but Ching vaguely understood that this house did have a master and that Uncle Wu was only looking after it for him. But they didn't know where the master was or even when he'd return. Perhaps he'd return in a couple of years, or perhaps he wouldn't return in their lifetime. Before, Ching had assumed that the master, who was traveling far away, as Uncle Wu put it, had probably passed away in some accident already. Never had he thought that this man would suddenly appear before them one day, and dressed as a woman, even. Ching, Uncle Wu called him. Go to the kitchen and prepare some kanji, then make a few side dishes. Master is back from what was surely a long and arduous journey, so he must eat something to warm up first. I'm going. Ching dutifully listened to Uncle Wu. He agreed at once and quickly scampered off. Yan Wushi glanced at his retreating back, then removed his veil. His foundations aren't bad, but he's a little stupid. Huan Yue's sect needs people who are agile of mind and excellent with people. He doesn't qualify. Uncle Wu quickly replied, my lowly self only took him in because I was bored, so I let him accompany me. I could never think such presumptuous thoughts. Originally, this house was one of Huan Yue's sect's bases. Bian Yan Mei had purchased it in his name, and because of the alliances of Huan Yue sect's disciples all used the surname Shu, these houses were collectively known as Shy residences. Uncle Wu oversaw this one, and after several years together, had indeed grown to love Ching a little and had thought about giving him the opportunity to enter Huan Yue sect. Yeah, ouch. Yeah. However, he would never dare to bring such an idea to Yan Wushi. Originally, he wanted to wait until Bian Yan Mei or Yu Shenyang came over to make his request. Could never have expected that neither of the two would show up, and instead the great Buddha himself had. Now he dared not even mention it. Shen Qiao suddenly said, being stupid means that worldly possessions won't easily tempt him, and it doesn't necessarily mean he can't put his heart into practicing martial arts. I find that child pure and simple myself, which is very good. If he has no connections to Huan Yue sect and is willing to learn martial arts, I can recommend him instead. At that moment, he was thinking of Bixia sect. After that tragic incident, their sect had waned greatly, and even finding gifted young successors wasn't easy. Yan Wushi was a grandmaster with sky-high expectations, so he might think little about Qing's talents, but the boy could still have a bright future in Bixia sect. Yan Wushi burst out in a chuckle. Oh, Xiao, I haven't seen you take such a liking to anyone our entire trip. If we're talking about talent and foundations, wasn't the boy we encountered earlier on the road better? Surely you aren't only saying this because you saw how he kept staring at you, infatuated with your face. A sect leader Yan. Just because you yourself are lustful, you believe everyone else to be the same as you. Before, he hadn't wanted to pay attention to Yan Wushi because whenever they argued, he lost more than he won. So whenever Yan Wushi returned to his original self, he'd try to limit how much he talked to him. But while he'd endured it the whole journey, he finally lost it here. Rather predictably, Yan Wushi laughed. Ha 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 ha! Wow, that was a weak one. I will attempt a better one later. Lust is as hunger, part of human nature. Everyone is like this. It's true that I like your face, but I love your cold indifference to me more. What's wrong with admitting that? You're so gentle towards Shai Ling and Yan, but you won't even say half a word to me when I appear. Still, in the end, both Shai Ling and Yan are just facets of mine. Thank you, Annika. They are facets of me, Yan Wushi. And if Shai Ling and Yan were using Mi's old face instead and tried to approach you that way, would you still treat them with the same special favor? The innocent Uncle Wu had been dragged into this mess. He couldn't figure out Shen Qiao and Yan Wushi's relationship, so he didn't dare speak and just gave a strained smile. Shen Qiao made a non-committal noise. It's true that just seeing you annoys me. I'd rather speak even more to Shai Ling than talk with you. Woo! Shen Qiao got some claws this time. Though Yan Wushi was still smiling, that smile had become somewhat dangerous. Uncle Wu wanted to leave, yet couldn't, but staying around was terribly awkward. As he listened to them talk, he wished that he could turn invisible. In the past, he'd followed Yan Wushi for a while. He knew that every time the man revealed this smile, someone was going to suffer. But surprisingly, after the smile was gone, Yan Wushi said gently, "All right, let's just say I misspoke. I let you dress me up like a woman for the entire journey without complaint, and I did my best to cooperate. Is that still not enough to earn some good humor from you? Our great sect leader Shen is magnanimous. I trust you won't hold it against me." With how arrogant the Huan Yue sect leader was, how many people had ever seen him lower himself and apologize? Not only was Uncle Wu alarmed, even Shen Qiao was somewhat surprised. Though Shen Qiao didn't reply, when he opened his mouth again, his tone had softened slightly. "You and Uncle Wu must have much to discuss. I won't disturb you any longer. If there are guest rooms, I'd like to rest a while." Seeing that Yan Wushi didn't object, Uncle Wu quickly said, "There are. We keep them tidy all throughout the year, so they're always ready for guests. I'll take your esteemed self there." He took Shen Qiao over and helped him settle in, then rushed back to pay respects to Yan Wushi. "What good fortune that the sect leader is safe and sound. This lowly one heard that you were... I didn't dare believe it. It really was just a rumor." Yan Wushi sneered. "Not really a rumor. I indeed sustained some injuries and have yet to fully recover." "Ah," said Uncle Wu. "Then the man just now was—" "His family name is Shen," said Yan Wushi. "Whilst he's here, treat him as you would treat me." Uncle Wu quickly gave his assent, too afraid to ask further. "What has been happening outside lately?" asked Yan Wushi. News of your death has already spread throughout the Jianghu," said Uncle Wu. "This lowly one refused to believe it, and even sent a message to Chang'an, but Da Langjun has yet to reply. Word is that the Yihuan sect has taken the chance to cause us many problems, but this lowly one remembered your instructions. I've cautiously kept a low profile, so this location remains a secret." "What about Yuan Yang?" "The Lord of Shou personally went to battle and vanquished Qi. Right now his reputation is at its peak, like the sun at high noon. Even the Khaganate and southern Chen fear a direct confrontation with him. After the Lord of Shou heard the news about you, he apparently sent men to torment your murderers, but only the Liu He Guild has surface forces that could be tracked down. The whereabouts of the rest are unknown. Their various sects aren't within Shou, and the Lord of Shou isn't someone of the Jianghu either. The power of the imperial court wasn't enough. In the end, he could only seal off several of the Liu He Guild's branches within Shou." "When did you send that message to Chang'an?" asked Yan Wushi. Last year, on the 25th of the final month." Sending a letter and receiving a reply did take some time, but it was also possible that something had happened with Bian Yanmei. "I'll stay here for a few days and wait for a response from Chang'an. Go and make arrangements. Make sure that no unrelated persons leak any information." Uncle Wu hastily said, "Yes, Master can rest assured. Ching doesn't know this lowly one's identity, but that child is good at keeping secrets and his background is clean. He definitely won't cause any trouble." He personally brought Yan Wushi to his room to rest. As Uncle Wu left the backyard, he saw Ching walking over with the freshly made food. "Uncle, the food is ready. Should I take it to them now?" Uncle Wu nodded. "Remember not to say too much. Don't ask about things you shouldn't. Chattering on in front of me is fine, but you can't do that in front of Master. He dislikes people who are talkative." Ching promised, but he couldn't resist asking curiously, "Uncle, is your master the lord of this house? Are they a man or a woman?" Uncle Wu's face went dark. "Of course he's a man. You can't even tell men and women apart." "How should I know?" Ching muttered. "Maybe he has some special hobbies? I find the gentleman who came with him easier to get along with." Though his voice was very quiet, Uncle Wu still heard him, and he sent the boy a smack on the back of his head. "What are you muttering? Hurry up and bring them their food. Keep quiet. Those who talk too much err the most. Don't you know that silence is golden?" Wow, I did not expect an AMC quote. Ow! All right. Chapter 73, Tranquility. Ching was fairly young and had grown up in Wei province. He was satisfied with his current life and had never seen the outside world, but with 2 extra people in the house, he naturally grew a little curious. Though Uncle had repeatedly warned him to not disturb them unless there was something important, he still took the chance to speak with Shen Qiao sometimes when delivering their meals. Of course, he didn't dare strike up a conversation with Yan Wushi, not even if he were 10 times braver. Youths possessed an instinct akin to that of animals. He knew very well whom he could speak to and whom he shouldn't provoke. Today, like always, he knocked on the door of Shen Qiao's room with a hot meal. There was no response, but Ching was used to this. After waking up at dawn, Shen Qiao spent most of the day outside in the courtyard practicing the sword. Ching opened the door and entered, then he placed the chopsticks on the table before taking out the kanji and the side dishes one by one. Footsteps sounded behind him, and Ching grinned as he looked back. Shenling Jun, you're back, just in time. Halfway through, though, he suddenly stopped, almost choking on his own saliva. He quickly clambered to his feet, and his bright smile instantly transformed into a reserved and strained one. Hello, master. You look as if you don't want to see me, Yan Wushi said, eyebrow raised. He walked in as composed as ever. He no longer wore the woman's outfit he had on when he'd arrived. Even the hair at his temples had returned to its original color. He was dressed in dark blue, the shadow of a smile on his face, poised and charming. But Ching inexplicably became afraid, to the point he couldn't meet Yan Wushi's eyes. The casual air about him vanished as he quickly straightened, hands together. Ching wouldn't dare. Uncle Wu told Ching that he must treat Master with the utmost respect and not offend him in any way. Yan Wushi's thin lips curled up slightly, and he sat down at the table, his posture laid back. You're so reserved with me, yet so casual with Shen Qiao. Clearly, you must like him a lot. Ching stammered. Shen Langjun is a very kind person. Said Yan Wushi. He is indeed kind to everyone. Even if he's being bothered or disturbed, he'd never show it on his face. In Ching's mind, Shen Qiao possessed practically all the qualities of perfection that he yearned for himself. A good temper, good looks, great martial arts, and he treated others kindly. It wasn't just Ching. Any youth around his age would adore and admire someone like that. In this house, Ching only had Uncle Wu for company. He didn't even have playmates his age. Now that Shen Qiao was here, of course he wanted to get closer and speak to him more. That was only natural. But when Yan Wushi said it, there was now a slight implication that it was strange. Hearing those words, Ching was both sad and disappointed, and he wondered if his coming to talk to Shen Qiao every day was actually a bother to him. The youth hung his head. He looked like a dispirited puppy. But Yan Wushi didn't feel sorry for him in the slightest. Instead, he poured fuel on the fire with a final blow. So you need to be more self-aware. Yes, said Ching. His voice was downcast. He seemed almost on the verge of tears. Just then, Shen Qiao entered with his sword. A faint sheen of sweat shone on his face, but this only made his complexion seem fairer, giving him a faint glow. What's wrong? He asked, looking at the two. One standing, one sitting. He had no idea what was going on. Why are you in my room? The second question was directed at Yan Wushi. Yan Wushi smiled. I smelled the aroma of food, so I came to steal some. Shen Qiao frowned. Didn't Ching bring yours to you? Food tastes better when it's someone else's, said Yan Wushi blithely. Seeing another person's good appetite makes the food taste even better. God, that's such sibling vibes. It's like, I know we have the same thing, but I want to eat yours because it tastes better. I'm going to steal your fries because I get more satisfaction out of eating them. Yep. Shen Qiao didn't believe a word he said. He felt that the situation was somewhat off, as if something had happened before he'd entered. Ching. Shen Qiao saw his lowered head and gently asked, What's wrong? Nothing. Master and Shen Langjun should enjoy their meals. Once you're finished, I'll come clean up. With that, he quickly turned and dashed out the room. Out of the corner of his eye, Shen Qiao saw the youth's eyes seemed a bit red. He became even more suspicious as he watched Qing's retreating back. He turned to Yan Wushi. What did you say to him just now? Yan Wushi was all smiles. Qiao, you sound like an old mother hen protecting her chicks. Don't forget, Qing is one of my people. I can treat him however I wish, and no one would bat an eye. He only approached you a little, and that was enough for you to suddenly show him favor. We've traveled together for so long, so why did your attitude towards me never change? Really? Why did your attitude never change? It did. And then you traded him for a sword to a sexual deviant. That shit stays with you. Right? Gee, I wonder. Exactly, Annika. If Shen Qiao's expression earlier was very ordinary, then now he looked completely devoid of emotion. It's not as though my attitude means anything to sect leader Yan. Whenever his flaw was exposed and his personality shifted, Yan Wushi could feel it. It was like he'd grown another pair of eyes and was watching the outside, but he could only watch, unable to control his body. So he could see how Shen Qiao interacted with his other personalities. Shen Qiao maintained some weariness, even towards the sincerely gentle Yan. There was only one exception. Back in Ruoqiang, Shai Ling, who shouldn't have awakened at that time, had used all his strength to seize control of his body and return to find Shen Qiao. At that time, though Yan Wushi had been in a deep slumber, he'd coolly watched as Shen Qiao had smiled at Shai Ling. He'd also felt the tremors within Shen Qiao's heart. Hello, Truffle. Welcome. How you doing today? I hope you're doing all right. Oh, both Truffle and Esper Lady. Oh, good. I'm glad you're fine. There is a schedule change since we unfortunately had to cancel Tuesday due to technical difficulties. But we are also we're going to stream Monday and Tuesday next week because I've timed the chapters perfectly, so we start book 4 on the 1st of the new year. So we need to finish book 3 before then, and then the Days of Ficmas start on next Thursday. That's so cool! No, sorry I was late. An aquarium was streaming a talk on sea turtles. That's a good reason to be late. Right? That sounds so cool. Was it really cool? Yes. No worries. I'm going to make a post about it. Like just kind of like with a timetable. And then after the 18th, it'll be a daily thing with the updates of like what story it is that day, as well as a link to the video. So if you just check the posts every day, or if you don't check every day for the fanfic stuff, it'll just all be there. You'll see the pictures are different. But yeah. Okay, continuing. That man was tender-hearted by nature. If someone gave him one thing, he'd return to them 10. If any other person went through what he had with Chenggong and Ui, even if they weren't less seething with hatred, it would at least make them disheartened and dispassionate. But Shen Qiao instead cherished kindness even more, even if that kindness looked trivial in the eyes of others. Oh, that's so cool! I love that they had, like, interactions with it as well. That's so cool. That was why Shen Qiao had started to show Shai Ling favor. Perhaps from that moment forward, Shen Qiao really had begun to treat Shai Ling as his own person. Only when in front of Shai Ling did Shen Qiao separate him from Yan Wushi. However kind he was to the former, he'd be just as cold to the latter. But the more he did so, the more intrigued Yan Wushi became. In the past, he'd teased Shen Qiao for 2 reasons. The first was he thought this person somewhat ridiculous for never learning his lesson after repeated betrayals. That everyone held evil within their hearts, and the only difference was how deeply they hid it. Shen Qiao himself couldn't be an exception. He tried everything to draw out that malice within the depth of his heart. The second was that he wanted to implant the demonic core within Shen Qiao to see what would happen if one fused a demonic and Taoist core. So, Shen Qiao had been his guinea pig. But life is unpredictable. Shen Qiao didn't walk in the direction Yan Wushi had set for him. Instead, he'd taken a completely different path. Though he'd experienced trial after trial, forced again and again to confront the treacheries of the human heart, this person had refused to change. He was even willing to treat Shai Ling, who'd been born from Yan Wushi himself, with such gentle amiability and sincerity. Should he call this kind of person foolish or stubborn? But in Yan Wushi's eyes, whether it was Shai Ling or Yan Wushi didn't matter. Good or evil, painful or wonderful, he alone should be special to Shen Qiao. There was no need for some other random person to partake in that special regard. Let's just take that in for a moment. I'm going to read that paragraph, that little section over again, just so we can all take that in. Ready? But in Yan Wushi's eyes, whether it was Shai Ling or Yan Wushi, didn't matter. Good or evil, painful or wonderful, he alone should be special to Shen Qiao. There was no need for some other random person to partake in that special regard. He's so jealous, but he's so jealous of himself. It is definitely giving Tian Lang Jun. Tuxin Jun. Yeah, no. Like, why do you get to have Shizen? Exactly. Hearing Shen Qiao's words, Yan Wushi laughed. Who said that it doesn't mean anything? It means a lot to me. If you are willing to split even 1/12 of what you've given Shai Ling to me, who knows how happy I'd be. Yeah, Yan Wushi, are you for real? He is, and that's the audacity, like the meme, the audacity of this bitch. Like, oh god, what is it? The Lion, the Witch, and the audacity of this bitch, like, definitely applies to Yan Wushi in this situation. Shen Qiao turned a deaf ear. He lowered his head and focused on sipping his kanji. Right? It is pretty funny when they're jealous of themselves. It's also giving that moment like La Manji in the specials when they're doing the incense burner dreams. If you know, you know. Definite jealousy moment. Right now, as long as it wasn't Shai Ling, Shen Qiao only listened to a small fraction of what Yan Wushi said. And he'd pry open that tiny fraction, ponder and analyze it to avoid committing the same mistakes. It was really quite pathetic to fall into the same pit twice when you ought to have learned to avoid it. Though Shen Qiao acknowledged that he wasn't a smart person, he wasn't that stupid either. Seeing Shen Qiao's lack of response, Yan Wushi smiled and spoke no further. He picked up his kanji and began to eat. For the two of them, these past few days were the most tranquil and peaceful they'd had yet. Certainly nothing like the hair-raising series of events they'd encountered in Ruoqiang. Ever since they'd left Tuyuhun, Shen Qiao had to deal with his ever-changing personalities. Yan Wushi's flaw hadn't been eliminated, while also keeping guard against their surroundings. Yan Wushi had enemies all over the world, so Shen Qiao hadn't been able to relax even for a moment. Only after entering this place did he start to feel at ease, and he could focus on cultivating the Shuyang strategy's true qi. As for Yan Wushi, though Shen Qiao didn't make any detailed inquiries, he could see from his behavior that the man's personality was gradually stabilizing. It was rare to see a massive personality shift from him right after waking up. Most likely, the contents of the silk piece had illuminated something to Yan Wushi. With his abilities, it would only be a matter of time before he could patch that flaw in his demonic core, and once that happened, he'd rise to the next level with the Fenglin scriptures. It was possible his martial arts could progress so far that he would be unparalleled in the whole world. Even if he didn't achieve that, he wouldn't be far from it. At that point, even if the 5 martial experts joined up again, they might not be able to take down Yan Wushi a second time. It was just a pity that Shai Ling, a faint melancholy flashed through Shen Qiao's heart. He sighed to himself. Yan Wushi suddenly asked, "Why do you show Ah Qing such favor? Surely it's not because he resembles Shai Ling, and hence you're projecting onto him?" When in front of him, Shen Qiao was even more reticent than usual. If he didn't need to speak with him, he wouldn't. But Yan Wushi seemed to have guessed his mood, for he smiled. "You like him, but I find him a nuisance. If you don't tell me the reason, I'll have Uncle Wu drive him out after you leave." Shen Qiao refused to play along. "Sect leader Yan, you've always done as you please. Why would I have any say in what you choose to do?" Yan Wushi laughed. "All right, then I won't drive him out. Can you please tell me? I'm pleading with you." A true man knew when to bend. Sect leader Yan was unscrupulous in achieving his goals, and he'd never cared for anything like moral integrity. He was a mighty martial artist, a grand master, but he could even say words like, "I'm pleading." It didn't bother him, but as the listener, Shen Qiao couldn't take it. Shen Qiao could be coaxed, but not cowed. Yan Wushi had learned this long ago. In any case, wheedling a little wouldn't hurt him. Other people might think it'd damage their dignity or integrity to act like this, but demonic practitioners placed little importance on such things. To no surprise, though Shen Qiao looked slightly uncomfortable, he still said, "Ah Qing is a little like the disciple I accepted." Oh shit, yeah. That would definitely be one for Ah Qing with the whole injustice to service worker. At least one. I might give him 2 just for all the comments. What do you think? 1 or 2? Yan Wushi smiled. "Why didn't I know that you accepted a disciple?" "You know him as well," Shen Qiao said flatly. "It's Bailong Monastery's Shiwu." Okay. So the current count is 17 with 1 justice, 2 service workers. Okay. The moment he said this, he inevitably recalled the abbot and Chuyi and how they'd died. As he blamed himself, any good humor he had for Yan Wushi vanished as well. All right, so he was picking at Shen Qiao's scabs. Yan Wushi was highly intelligent, and he wasn't crazy right now. Of course he could figure out what had happened. But he acted like he hadn't seen the refusal on Shen Qiao's face, which practically screamed, "I don't want to talk to you anymore." Instead, he kept smiling and talking. "I've indeed seen Shiwu before. It's true that his foundations and aptitude are both quite good. If he meets a wise master, he might see great accomplishments in the future. This level of shameless behavior, Shen Qiao really had to hand it to him. He was just about to toss his guest out when faint knocking sounded from outside the residence. There were 2 hallways and 1 courtyard between them and the front gates, but martial artists had fantastic hearing, so they both heard Ah Ching's "I'm coming" as he jogged over to open them. The shy residents had always been quiet. They had few visitors. When Uncle Wu left to buy groceries, he'd usually take the back gates. He almost never left from the front gates. At once, the sense that something was amiss surged within Shen Qiao and Yan Wushi. It was an indescribably mysterious feeling, almost like they'd read each other's minds. Only martial artists who had attained a certain level would have this reaction. Sorry, there's like a tickle in my throat and it's weird. Shan He Tongbei was close by. As Ah Ching opened the door, Shen Qiao's hand was already on top of the sheath. "Who is it?" Ah Ching's voice drifted from afar. "I hope you are well, young benefactor. May I ask if this is the shy residence?" The moment he heard this voice, Shen Qiao's expression shifted. Though he hadn't interacted much with this man, how could he fail to recognize him? But they'd been so careful the entire journey. Of course, they couldn't have been completely flawless, but they'd done their best to leave no traces. How did Buddhist master Shu Ting find them so quickly? Could it be Chen Gong's doing? The 2 of them shared a glance. Yan Wushi's face was surprisingly composed. In fact, his expression had barely changed. "Go hide first," Shen Qiao said sternly. "I'll meet with him." With their present cultivation, neither of them were Shu Ting's match. But Shu Ting's target wasn't Shen Qiao, so even if he couldn't defeat him, Shen Qiao could still escape. Yan Wushi raised an eyebrow. "I fear it's too late." As soon as those words left his mouth, Shu Ting's voice came from the courtyard. "Sect leader Yan is truly remarkable. This humble monk admires him greatly." In the blink of an eye, the man had moved from the gates to the courtyard outside their room. Ah Ching was still shouting up a storm, panting as he chased after him. But he couldn't even keep up with Shu Ting's shadow, much less with the edge of his robe. Very few people in the Jianghu could achieve this level of speed where the land seems to shrink down to mere inches and the dust couldn't even cling to their feet. The door to their room wasn't closed in the first place. Where Shen Qiao and Yan Wushi were standing, they could see that a monk clothed in black had appeared. Yan Wushi sneered. "So persistent, you bald old donkey. You're like an evil spirit. I haven't even repaid you for bringing a bunch of capering clowns to conspire against me that day. You sure have some nerve showing up here." Buddhist master Shu Ting brought his hands together in greeting and said, "This humble monk, too, did not expect sect leader Yan to be so powerful. You were ambushed by 5 great martial experts, yet you managed to deceive everyone and came out safe and sound." Then he greeted Shen Qiao as well. "Taoist master Shen is also here. What a coincidence." Buddhist master Shu Ting's voice was placid, without even a hint of anger. As for whether that "what a coincidence" contained any sarcasm, only he himself would know. Yan Wushi burst out laughing. "Other than you, you bald donkey, Shu Ting, everyone else's was mediocre. You couldn't even kill me fighting 5-on-1. Bunch of trash. And they have the nerve to call themselves experts. Shu Ting, to think that you'd be willing to lower yourself so far that you'd lump yourself in with them. Really, the longer you live, the more you regress." Buddhist master Shu Ting didn't grow the slightest bit angry. He looked at Yan Wushi with a placid expression. Even his gaze held no hostility. The new generation shall replace the old. This humble monk is advanced in years. Sooner or later he will yield his spot to more talented successors. With more time, Benefactor Duan and Benefactor Do may not remain inferior to this humble monk. Sect leader Yan came back to life and is the same as ever. This humble monk must admit that this is most admirable. Sect leader Yan has to know as well. The farther one walks along the martial path, the more difficult it is to meet an opponent of equal skill. If there were a choice, this humble monk, too, would rather drink tea and play wakey with sect leader Yan, spar and exchange pointers, to be friends as well as opponents. However, extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary methods. Every day that sect leader Yan is here, Yuan Yang will behave without scruples and oppress Buddhism further. In order for Buddhism to flourish, this humble monk can only resort to such actions. It's not due to any personal grudges, so he asks for sect leader Yan's forgiveness. There was an implication within his words. Since he'd come here today, he would not leave empty-handed. There must have been a proper conclusion. "May I ask the great master," said Shen Qiao, "how did you know that Yan Wushi was here?" "Monks do not lie," said Shu Ting. "To tell the truth, this humble monk met Chen Gong at Chang'an. As He Huan sect's Yan Shou had once injured my disciple, and Chen Gong is also close to He Huan sect, I wanted to obtain Yan Shou's whereabouts from him. Chen Gong said he didn't know, and to extricate himself, he told me that sect leader Yan was still alive, and that he'd even obtained a Shu Yang strategy scroll. Before he'd left, Chen Gong had promised Shen Qiao to not divulge Yan Wushi's whereabouts, but Shen Qiao had never placed much faith in that promise. Hearing this from Shu Ting, he actually had the feeling that this was expected. But between Chang'an and Tuyuhan, as are many other provincial cities, it's impossible for Chen Gong to know where we'd go or stop. "Correct," said Shu Ting. "This humble monk searched for him the entire journey from Chang'an. I stopped in Wei Province and had planned on leaving tomorrow, but then I unexpectedly overheard a conversation between two people. One claimed to be a vendor who goes about selling vegetables to each household every day. There was one household that had inexplicably doubled their demand, so he was very happy." Yeah, really, Chen Gong? I'm not actually surprised. Right? He's one of those where I'm just like, Chen Gong. Shen Qiao sighed. The great master is truly meticulous and observant. If he could use this ability to arrest thieves and settle disputes, it would be enough to render the world free of injustices. Thank you for your praise, Taoist Master Shen. Today this humble monk has taken the liberty to visit due to sect leader Yan. Taoist Master Shen is an unrelated party, so I ask that you not involve yourself, lest you meet with some accidental injury. What a coincidence, Shen Qiao said. The great master wishes to kill him, but I wish to protect him. That boy just can't do right. That boy just doesn't want to do right. That boy has absolutely no regard for anyone else besides himself. Like, he does not give a fuck. Like, he has not given a fuck the entire time. Like, you can't teach somebody who's not willing to learn. Buddhist Master Shu Ting's face betrayed a trace of astonishment. As far as this humble monk knows, the demonic and Taoist sects have never been close, and sect leader Yan has time and again shown Taoist Master Shen much ingratitude, repaying her kindness with evil. Why would Taoist Master Shen still try to protect him? Yep, he's learned all the wrong lessons. He really has. It is as the great master says, said Shen Qiao. Each day that he's here, you and Yang will remain safe and sound. Looking at all the nations, Qi is already gone. Only the two kingdoms of Shou and Chen can be called strong. But southern Chen is protected by the Confucians, so there's no room for Buddhism there. The Great Master's continuous attempts to kill Yan Wushi are paving the way for the Gok Turks to encroach on the Central Plains, are they not? Shu Ting gave a chant. Is Taoist Master Shen saying that he's also on the Lord of Shou's side? Correct, said Shen Qiao. Shu Ting gave a slight sigh. Then it seems that today this humble monk must pass through Taoist Master Shen first. When his final word fell, his golden staff lightly struck the dark stone tiles beneath them, and a heavy sound seemed to explode in Shen Qiao's ears. At the same time, Shan He Tongbei exited its sheath with a clang. Shen Qiao sprang up, and sword and staff met in midair. In an instant, flashes of light and shadow interweaved, while internal energy spread outward from their points of contact. Anyone like Ah Ching, without any martial arts foundations, was instantly blasted by the shockwaves. He cried out, his ears ringing with pain, and was forced to stumble back. Only after hiding behind the wall did he feel a little better. See, I feel bad for Ah Ching, just because, he is literally in, stumbling around a battlefield of titans. He has no reason to be there. And he's about to get his shit rocked just by, the power waves that are coming off these two. Shen Qiao had thought that Yan Wushi, being skilled at assessing situations, who possessed little of the burdens of the usual Grand Master, would see no reason to involve himself. Surely, upon seeing Shen Qiao obstructing Shu Ting, he'd turn around and leave first. But instead, even after Shen Qiao had exchanged several blows with Shu Ting, he saw Yan Wushi still standing motionless in place out of the corner of his eye. Yep. That's another injustice. 18. Why aren't you leaving? Shen Qiao shouted enraged. Don't just stand there. Ah, Qiao, calm down. I do want to leave, but you should ask the bald old donkey if he'd let me. The corners of Yan Wushi's lips curled up a little, but his eyes weren't smiling in the slightest. As if in response to his words, two young monks appeared at the east and the west, both bareheaded and dressed in black monk's robes, standing upon the roof tiles. This humble monk is Lian Sheng. This humble monk is Lian Mie. Mai? I'm going to go with Lian Mai. The two of them said in unison, We greet sect leader Yan. I love how he's like, I want a straightforward battle. Oh, by the way, these are my two shadow assassins in the background, so you can't run away. That doesn't seem very honorable to me. Not gonna lie. All right. Chapter 74, Buddhist Master Shu Ting. The reason Buddhist Master Shu Ting could rank within the world's top 3 was definitely not because he was good at calling over friends to help him ambush his opponents, but because he was indeed very strong. Shen Qiao had never doubted this. The moment Buddhist Master Shu Ting had appeared, he'd already foreseen that there'd be a fierce battle today. Buddhist Master Shu Ting wasn't that much younger than Qi Fengwei, but once a martial artist achieved a certain echelon, their appearance would be preserved. Their rate of aging would be slower than an ordinary person's. When Qi Fengwei had passed, he'd only looked about 30 or 40. No one could have guessed that his real age had already been pushing 100. You know I'm on the internet too much when my knee-jerk reaction was like, "What a fox!" Like, silver fox. I was like, the internet has ruined me. Damn! So when the average person looked at Buddhist Master Shu Ting's handsome face, if it weren't for his complete lack of hair, they'd definitely take him as the young master of a rich family. However, he was calm and composed, his beautiful appearance dignified. There was no hint of the secular world upon him. Shen Qiao, too, carried an immortal's lofty indifference to material gain, but he also had a very tender heart. To be fair, my reaction was, well, that's terrifying. I love the difference between our reactions, Truffle. Like, mine was like, what a man! Yours was like, god damn, that's scary. Oh. Danmei, what have you done to me? Oh. Hence, sometimes he seemed more sentimental than most. When comparing him to Shu Ting, Taoist against Buddhism, Shu Ting was like a Buddhist statue within a temple. Mouth and heart as hard as iron, lacking even a trace of mercy. Shen Qiao, on the other hand, was more like an azure pond, tranquil in appearance, but when a swan so much as skimmed the surface, it'd leave many sentimental ripples in its wake. The first of the Akala seals form of emptiness. The countless forms of physical phenomena are only layer upon layer of false embellishments. The common people cannot recognize this, so they are easily trapped within, unable to free themselves. Only by maintaining a heart as clear as glaze can one forsake falsehoods for truth and disregard Mara, remaining true to oneself. The seals came from all directions surrounding Shen Qiao with layers upon layers of palm strikes. As Shu Ting's snow-white, flawless right hand swirled indefinitely, they became like the seals of Vajrapani, capable of felling monsters and demons, unavoidable and inescapable. But Shen Qiao remained firmly in place, his left hand behind his back, while he gave his right a slight flick. Shan He Tong Bei tremored at his side, its song like weeping, an ode or a cry, drawn out and remote. It cleaved through the mass of seals, glimpsing the truth from the countless after-images, striking directly at Shu Ting's right hand. Shu Ting shifted from an open palm to a sweeping gesture. His fingertips were like willow leaves in the wind, so graceful and beautiful that it was impossible to look away. When compared with the restless momentum of his previous attack, it was as if the icy winds over acres of frozen, snowy fields had suddenly transformed into a river in spring, reflecting the clouds suspended high in the boundless sky. There were geese and orioles. Peach blossoms dangled over the water, indescribably graceful and wondrous. We have a picture. Need to see all of this so I can figure out if I'm angling it correctly. There we go. They both, like, Shen Qiao is so pretty in that picture, and like Shu Ting is like really cool looking. Like, he does have great eyebrows, like very intense eyes. They really do look really graceful. I like the flowers in the background. It's a nice contrast. Xuanmin? Which book is that from? Xuanmin. Or show? copper coins. Okay, haven't gotten to that one yet. I'm thinking about getting to that one over winter break. Yes, I see now. Okay. But Shen Qiao didn't press his advantage. He immediately withdrew and retreated instead. Whenever Shu Ting's palm brushed, his true qi overflowing, the stones of the floor began to crack and splinter. Even Ah Ching, several yards away, could feel a strange pain on his face, like a sharp blade was scraping against it. And another one for Shu Ting! Oh, it's definitely on the list, Truffle. Oh, I think it just moved up the list a little bit. I love when other characters are snarky. If you couldn't tell. Using a rainbow stretches across the heavens, Shen Qiao drifted like floating dust as he swept back several yards. Then he suddenly leapt up again. Suspended upside down in midair, he and his sword transformed into a band of white silk, his sword chi pouring down from above like a cascade grounded in the heavens, its spray akin to thousands of snow lions bounding forth. Accompanying it was a thunderous tempest, the blade point piercing forth, with oppressive momentum, unstoppable in its advance. This series of moves had taken place in the twinkling of an eye. Shu Ting's face, normally as still as deep water unmoved by waves, finally betrayed a trace of astonishment. Like a cyclone, the sword chi engulfed him from above. At that moment, Shu Ting had a number of options available to him, but breaking out of the sword chi wasn't one of them. It whirled a few inches away, and when he raised his left hand, the golden staff met with the sword chi as they both exploded with a thunderous roar. Their breaths seemed to freeze, leaving both unable to advance even an inch. Instead, they were blasted away, sending both men reeling back several steps. It's only been several months, yet Taoist Master Shen's martial arts seem to have advanced another level. This is truly a commendable feat. Buddhist Master Shu Ting's expression was grave. He no longer spared any attention for Lian Shang and Lian Mei's situation, but instead devoted all of his focus to Shen Qiao. But this wasn't good news for Shen Qiao. Though he'd indeed made progress, that didn't mean Shu Ting had been idle. For a martial artist grandmaster like Buddhist Master Shu Ting, progressing further was very difficult, but he could still practice martial arts, and he could still attain further mental enlightenment. The more honed and perfected one's state of mind was, the more formidable their martial arts would become. Shen Qiao had concluded this previously. Before being injured, he could have fought Guang Lingsan, Duan Wen Yang, and the others to a draw, but if it were Buddhist Master Shu Ting, he'd likely find himself lacking. Therefore, in his present state, he was at a sure disadvantage. He'd rebuilt his body using the might of the Shu Yang strategy, and now his foundations integrated the strengths of the three schools. One could say the foundations of his future house would be several times stronger than other people's. But this didn't mean that he could build the house itself any faster. Shen Qiao had already achieved the echelon of Sword Heart and was merely a step away from Sword Spirit, but his internal energy was only 7/10 of what it had been. He was completely unable to use his Sword Heart to the fullest. And against an expert like Shu Ting, there was absolutely no chance for a fluke. Therefore, Shen Qiao couldn't allow the other man to discover those details, for if he did, that would mean no one on the scene could stop Shu Ting. Shen Qiao let his blade hang as he stood in place. In the end, he said slowly, the Buddhist sects do not bear any grudge against Huan Yue sect, and the Great Master has already killed sect leader Yan once. So why must he continue pursuing him so relentlessly? Even if there is no sect leader Yan, no Huan Yue sect, as long as Yuan Yang is emperor, there will be other powers that will support him as well. The Great Master is far-sighted and wise, so he must understand this, correct? On the other end, Yan Wushi was fighting 2 against 1, but he took the time to say, "Ah, Qiao, it must be thanks to my venerable self, but your mouth has really improved. You've even left that bald old donkey speechless. I'm sure he's so ashamed he'll torment you further out of rage." Before, even 10 Lian Shangs and 10 Lian Meis wouldn't be Yan Wushi's match, let alone one of each. However, that couldn't be the case now. Shu Ting knew this too, and that's why he'd brought his disciples. And even if Lian Shang and Lian Mei couldn't bring down Yan Wushi this time, they could still stall him. Shu Ting saw through Shen Qiao's intentions. He shook his head and said, "Taoist Master Shen should know that this concerns the survival of Buddhism. There is no point in speaking any further. Today, this humble monk came here for sect leader Yan alone. If Taoist Master Shen is willing to withdraw and not involve himself, this humble monk will be infinitely grateful." This man was truly interesting. Though he held the upper hand, he was still so courteous to Shen Qiao, showing no trace of annoyance or anger. He was as indifferent as a light breeze. He truly possessed the demeanor of a Grand Master. Were the two of them not firmly opposed to each other, Shen Qiao would much rather sit down to discuss theory with him than face him like this. Swords drawn and bows notched, the sparks of war imminent. But Yan Wushi seemed to be rather displeased with Shen Qiao's new view of Buddhist Master Shu Ting. As if determined to break his perception of him, he said, "Ah, Qiao, that question was really too foolish. How could the bald old donkey not know that killing Yuan Yang is the solution to all his problems? He pursues me relentlessly because Buddhism needs to maintain its just and honorable image, which can't be stained with the crime of regicide. Even if they want to kill him, they must send someone else to do it, thereby keeping their own hands clean and free of the slightest speck of dust. Isn't that right, bald old donkey?" Shu Ting had no interest in wasting words on him. He chatted a quiet Amitabha, then coolly said, "Taoist Master Shen is unwilling to stand down. He insists on protecting Yan Wushi to the end. Therefore, this humble monk can only commit this offense." As he spoke, he took but a single step, yet he was already in front of Shen Qiao. A jade chime accompanied him, its twinkling sweet and unending, and his golden staff flitted towards Shen Qiao's chest. "I got it!" His movements were very slow, to the point that others could see every little detail, yet somehow at the same time so terrifyingly fast that there was no time to react. Shen Qiao realized with a shock that his own martial abilities were simply too inferior. He could predict where Shu Ting's hands were going, but his body still couldn't respond soon enough. By the time he'd raised his sword, a heavy blow had struck him on the chest. Pain rapidly spread from that point, and Shen Qiao couldn't stop himself from flying backward, his throat gurgling with a salty sweet taste. After his momentary daze, he spat out a huge mouthful of blood and slammed heavily into a colonnade pillar. But Shen Qiao didn't pause for even an instant. Using the pillar, his sword glare became as moonlight entering water, accompanying the ebb and flow of the river tides. A split second later, its light grew lustrous and brilliant, overlapping like layers upon layers of splendid brocade, surging towards Buddhist Master Shu Ting. Even with Shu Ting's cultivation, for a moment he was unable to distinguish man from sword. Meanwhile, Lian Shang and Lian Mei worked in tandem. They seemed to understand each other naturally, their thoughts and actions in perfect sync. Yan Wushi's martial prowess was far below that of his past self, and he'd yet to finish patching the flaw in his demonic core. There'd always be some leeway within his attacks, which the pair could take advantage of. With one on offensive and one on defensive, Li Shang and Lian Shang and Lian Mei encircled Yan Wushi. They didn't attempt to kill him, but they moved seamlessly together like yin and yang with no openings to speak of. It was obvious that they'd received Shu Ting's instructions beforehand. They knew their own strengths. Even if Yan Wushi's martial abilities had greatly diminished, killing him would be quite difficult. So they only sought to stall Yan Wushi, waiting for Shu Ting to defeat Shen Qiao, and then he could come and assist them. Unfortunately, after all that waiting and having exchanged several hundred blows in the meantime, both of their foreheads shone with sweat. Shu Ting was still being held up by Shen Qiao, completely unable to disengage. Lian Shang grew anxious. As his Shimei Lian Mei attacked Yan Wushi, he couldn't resist glancing over at his Shizun. And with just that glance, the situation suddenly changed. Yan Wushi had been on the defensive the entire time, but now he suddenly attacked. Using his finger as a sword, he struck at the center of Lian Mei's palm. Lian Mei had witnessed Yan Wushi's unimpressive showing earlier and ended up underestimating him despite himself, thinking that this was all the Huan Yue sect leader amounted to. And yet, just as this thought arose, he felt a stabbing pain within his palm as if a scalding iron rod had pierced through it. He couldn't help but scream, rearing back reflexively. A glance at his palm showed that a bloody hole had been gored through it and fresh blood gurgled out. You could faintly see the muscles and white bone within. Lian Shang heard the noises and quickly turned back. He couldn't help but be shocked at what he saw, but before he could react, a sword glare suddenly swept towards his face. "Go!" yelled Shen Qiao. With that one word, he grabbed Yan Wushi's arm and swept towards the southeast. Shen Qiao dared not take Shu Ting lightly. He pushed a rainbow stretches across the heavens to the utmost. Other people would have seen Shen Qiao and Yan Wushi, dragged behind him, transform into two afterimages on the wind. But still, Shen Qiao was worried that it wasn't enough. Terrified that Shu Ting would catch up to them, he soared forward without stopping, the trees on either side becoming mere shadows as they streaked by him at top speed. He never slowed down in the slightest. Though he didn't look back, Shen Qiao could clearly sense a menacing presence constantly behind them, both near and far, as it followed, like a blade against his back. It was obviously Shu Ting giving chase, unwilling to give up. Even if Shen Qiao were a step faster, he couldn't shake Shu Ting off so quickly. Shen Qiao hauled Yan Wushi outside the city, then bounded towards Guojian mountain next to Wei province. At the foot of the mountain was a dense forest, easy to hide in, but Yan Wushi said, "Go up the mountain." Shen Qiao didn't give it further thought. He charged up the mountain without stopping. It was early spring. The frozen rivers had thawed, hundreds of flowers were blooming, mountains filled with birdsong. Everything was brimming with life. The forest trees twisted and snarled, the mountain rocks were craggy. The mountain paths steep. There was no good foothold. Standing at the halfway point and looking down, the pencil-straight cliff walls, the curling clouds and mist, accentuated the precipitous nature even further. About halfway up the mountain, Shen Qiao discovered a cave obscured by a thicket. It was dark and winding on the inside, with a small stream that gurgled through it. The cave was quite deep. After the two of them entered, they walked many yards before it opened up, becoming bright and spacious. The stone walls here were smooth and glossy, the area about the size of a wealthy family's main hall. Looking up, Shen Qiao realized that there was no rocky ceiling overhead. The sunlight spilled through the gaps within the complex weave of branches, dappling the dead leaves by their feet. "Here is fine," said Yan Wushi. Shu Ting would only think that we'd hide within the mountain forests. He would absolutely not expect us to climb up here. Shen Qiao finally relaxed the guard he'd kept raised, but what followed wasn't the relief of relaxation, rather a giant mouthful of blood as he bent over. This was from the internal injuries he'd sustained during his battle with Shu Ting. When he'd fled with Yan Wushi, his chest had begun to throb unbearably, but he'd been afraid that opening his mouth would cause him to lose his breath, and his last push with it. So he hadn't even spoken until now. Not many people could withstand a strike from one of the three best grandmasters in the world. Shen Qiao's martial strength had yet to fully recover, yet he'd been able to battle Shu Ting for such a long period of time, and then escape from him with Yan Wushi in tow. It was all thanks to his still immature echelon of sword heart. But applying an echelon upon one's sword wasn't something that could be sustained endlessly, unlike internal energy or true qi. Even before their battle, Shen Qiao had never thought about fighting Buddhist Master Shu Ting to the bitter end. He'd already been prepared to retreat at any time. Escaping from right beneath Buddhist Master Shu Ting's nose was no easy task, especially while carrying a load. But Shen Qiao had pulled it off. Though the two of them hadn't discussed the idea of retreating in any depth, it was obvious that Yan Wushi had held similar thoughts on the matter. So they'd been able to achieve a tacit understanding and consensus despite exchanging no words. With this mouthful of blood, Shen Qiao's head swam and his vision blurred. He'd barely had the strength to stand. Overcome by his overtaxed martial strength and internal injuries, his sight faded and his ears rang as he collapsed forward. Yan Wushi caught him without hesitation. He even smiled and said, "Ah, Qiao, I know you like me, but you don't have to throw yourself into my arms like this." Oh, Yan Wushi. His voice was lacking in vitality. It was obvious he'd also been injured. But that did absolutely nothing to diminish the wanton teasing in his voice. Wanton. As soon as he said this, Shen Qiao hacked up another huge mouthful of blood. Practically half his body weight was now leaning on the crook of Yan Wushi's elbow. Yep. Oh, he'll pay for that remark. Yep. Yes, he will, Truffle. His face was stark white, as if he were about to breathe his last. Yan Wushi clicked his tongue once. Surely you're not coughing up blood in anger from just that. Of course, Shen Qiao wasn't coughing up blood out of anger, but he didn't have the strength to retort. He only said weakly, "Now that we're gone, what will happen to Uncle Wu and Ah Ching?" "Shu Ting isn't Sun Jinxing," said Yan Wushi. "He still needs to uphold Buddhism's image, and besides, he knows that he can't threaten me with those two anyway. Naturally, he won't do anything pointless." Shen Qiao nodded. Blood still stained his lips, making their cold paleness starker and the crimson more vivid. Yan Wushi used his thumb to wipe it away. There was a muffled, unbearable pain in Shen Qiao's chest. Even his breathing was shallow. He was completely unable to focus his energies on anything around him. His senses had become sluggish as well, and he was caught off guard when Yan Wushi shoved something small into his mouth and covered it with his hand, preventing Shen Qiao from spitting it out. His eyes widened, but his body had already performed the reasonable reaction of swallowing the object. His throat was so dry and painful he almost choked to death. He began coughing violently, which aggravated his internal injuries, and even his eyes grew a little moist. Jade Sistanch. One second. My phone has been buzzing. I just want to make sure nothing's wrong. 23 messages. Holy. My sister scared me by texting me so many times, but it was literally just to ask about a dress. You do not need to text me that many times to ask about a dress. My goodness. Chapter 75, Dreamscape. 245. Okay. Who told you this was Jade Sistench? Said Yan Wushi deliberately. It's obviously poison. Despite his internal injuries, which left him without even the strength to speak, Shen Qiao could still differentiate poison and medicine. Right? I'm glad it was something like that. She was having a fashion emergency. Yep. I'll take those kind of emergencies over other emergencies. That's very true. The Jade Sistanch can only heal external injuries. It won't be very effective on me. That strike from Shu Ting had broken one of his ribs. Now even the rise and fall of his chest was accompanied by a stabbing pain. And Wushi, you've been hoarding that for months. How is it still good if it's been months? It's magic, that's how. My brain instantly answered my question. But to martial artists, this kind of external injury was fairly common. Shen Qiao had suffered injuries too numerous to count, especially in his duel with Kunyi. So something like a broken rib wasn't even worth mentioning. The internal injuries were more troubling. Yep, most fashion emergencies end up being funny stories. Thank goodness. Then spit it out, Yan Wushi countered lazily. It was already inside Shen Qiao's stomach. How could he spit it out? Reality once again proved that arguing with Yan Wushi was completely pointless. Shen Qiao simply closed his mouth, and after a while he drifted off. He didn't sleep for long. Even if his eyes were closed, his body remained in a vigilant state, suspended between dreams and consciousness. He woke when it was just past noon. Looking around, Yan Wushi was nowhere to be found. A thought surfaced in Shen Qiao's mind. Had Yan Wushi left by himself? He sat up against the wall with great effort, doing his best not to aggravate his wound. Moist vines hung down from the overhead, and water droplets fell onto his cheek, bringing a touch of icy coldness. The stabbing pain in his chest had transformed into a dull ache. It was clear that the Jade Sistanch still had some effect. Shen Qiao sat cross-legged, circulating his energy to heal his injuries. After one full revolution, his true qi had flowed through his entire body, causing his limbs and bones to tingle with a warm numbness. Even the state of his internal injuries seemed to have improved. When he opened his eyes, faint footsteps sounded from the narrow passage leading to the cavern entrance. Shen Qiao didn't rise, having already identified who the person was from the cadence of those steps. Ever since his eyes had deteriorated, he'd purposely honed his hearing, even contemplating the slight differences in each person's footfalls. Over time, his ears had grown quite a bit sharper than those of an average martial artist. Sure enough, Yan Wushi walked in, carrying a skewer of sparrows. You went out? Asked Shen Qiao. Said Yan Wushi. Lend me Shan He Tong Bei for a moment. Shen Qiao naturally didn't think that Yan Wushi would use it to kill him, so he passed him the sword he always kept close while asking, You didn't encounter Shu Ting outside, did you? The moment he said this, he noticed that the Yan Wushi was using his sword to remove the sparrow's feathers. I think they forgot to take out the, or they just meant it kind of like as emphasis, but the moment he said this, he noticed that the Yan Wushi was using his sword to remove the sparrow's feathers. So he's either really pissed off, which makes sense, or just there's a typo. What are you doing? He snapped. Surprised, Yan Wushi countered. Do you eat sparrows with their feathers? Shen Qiao's qi and blood roiled. He almost spat out another mouthful of blood. That's the Shan He Tong Bei Shizun left to me. Yan Wushi was unfazed. Why is Qiao getting so angry? Careful, you'll cough up more blood. Chi Fingui is practically a god in your eyes, but he still had to eat. Perhaps he used this to shave behind your back. How would you know? As he talked, the feathers of several sparrows had already been scraped clean. Using a long sword for a dagger's work was no simple task, yet Yan Wushi handled it with ease. He then lowered the sword into the stream, washing off the sparrow's feathers on the surface before sheathing it and handing it back to Shen Qiao. He even used his chilled hands to stroke Shen Qiao's cheek. All right, Chi Fingui has been dead for ages. Even if you did use it to shave, it's not like he can pop out and yell at you. The sword exists within the heart, not outside your body. Only you'd treasure it this much. Look at Ui. I broke his Junzi Bu Chi, and he switched to a new sword without a word. You don't see him running to Chi Fingui's grave to wail and bawl. Shen Qiao was so furious he didn't want to speak to him anymore. It was a good thing he'd circulated his chi earlier, or he really would have coughed up blood. Yan Wushi, on the other hand, seemed to be in a good mood. He found a patch of dry ground, piled up some dead leaves and twigs, then lit it with a fire starter and began roasting the skewers of sparrows. Soon the fragrance of searing meat fanned out. He turned to look at Shen Qiao, whose eyes were closed as he circulated his qi. His profile was like white jade, turning gentle and radiant beneath the sunlight. His blue collar enclosed the beautiful line of his neck, causing that near austere aloofness to betray a hint of imperceptible warmth. Some days I wonder if Yan Wushi wants people to die from anger. Yes. He would sit there and purposely mess with people enough where they literally did die of anger just to see how long it would take. How many licks does it take to get to a Tootsie Pop? How many comments does it take to blow a blood vessel? Let's see. Yan Wushi had seen countless beauties in his life. There had been no lack of untouchable types among them, like flowers growing on the highest peaks, but not one had been like the man before him now, resembling a god or Buddha with his eyes closed, yet brimming with the tenderness of the mortal world when his eyes were open. Just as he thought this, Shen Qiao opened his eyes. Once night comes, I'll return to check on Uncle Wu and Ah Cheng. Yan Wushi nonchalantly pulled the sparrows off the branch one by one. As I said, Shu Ting needs to maintain the glorious image of Buddhism, so he can't lay his hands on them openly. The moment Shu Ting showed up, that residence was compromised. Wu Mi knows how to deal with this. By nature, he was a cold and indifferent person who rarely took the fate of others to heart. In his eyes, Wu Mi belonged to Huan Yue sect, so dying for Huan Yue sect was a proper ending for him. As for Ah Cheng, Yan Wushi would never afford him even the slightest hint of sympathy or compassion. However, he knew very well the kind of person Shen Qiao was. If he said any of this, the man would immediately run back to check. In the past, Yan Wushi would have just stood by and watched, but today he instead chose to resolve Shen Qiao's doubts. Do you know why I brought back 6 sparrows? Asked Yan Wushi. Shen Qiao started. He didn't understand why Yan Wushi would suddenly ask this. Thinking that there was some deeper meaning to it, he tilted his head a little and began to ponder it seriously. Yan Wushi peeled off a piece of bark from somewhere, then placed the roasted sparrows on top. As Shen Qiao looked at them, he immediately found it difficult to keep his mouth from twitching. Upon that piece of bark, 6 sparrows were laid neatly out, with 1 in the center and 5 arranged evenly around it. This dish is called plum blossom sparrows. Shen Qiao bit his tongue. You came up with that name yourself, didn't you? You have to eat the one in the center first before you can eat the ones outside. Why? Because it looks better that way. If you eat the one on the outermost first, the plum blossom will be ruined. Shen Qiao was speechless. Suspecting that one of Yan Wushi's episodes was flaring up again, he couldn't help but shoot him a glance of concern. Yan Wushi's expression remained composed. He even smiled at him and said gently, "Ah, Qiao, this is a token of my appreciation. Do you really have the heart to waste it?" Shen Qiao had never expected gratitude for risking his life to save Yan Wushi, but this method of thanking someone was really too strange. But when he considered Yan Wushi's way of doing things, Shen Qiao thought that him conjuring up some pear blossom sparrows or peach blossom sparrows next time wouldn't be too much of a surprise either. Are we sure that Yan Wushi isn't related to Shai Lian, right? After all, not everyone would be bored enough to line up every single green bean on their plate while they were enjoying a meal at a tavern. Shen Qiao dithered for a moment before finally picking up the sparrow in the center and taking a bite. Apart from it being unsalted, the taste was quite decent. "How are your injuries?" asked Shen Qiao. Yan Wushi smiled. "You'll know if you'd feel it." As he talked, he extended his wrist to Shen Qiao without the slightest hesitation. The acupoint upon the wrist was also one of the gates of life. Regardless of martial prowess, anyone who was grasped here couldn't afford to make any rash movement. I think they meant movements. It wouldn't have been out of the ordinary for Shai Ling to do something like this, but Shen Qiao knew it wasn't him. He repressed the strange feeling in his heart, then placed his hand over Yan Wushi's wrist. After a moment of silence, he said, "You still have some internal injuries, but they're not serious. 1 or 2 days of rest should be enough. This mountain is cold, damp, and inconvenient. Hiding for a couple of days is fine, but we can't remain here much longer. What are your plans?" "Head to Hangzhou first, then Chang'an," said Yan Wushi. Shen Qiao was taken aback. "That would mean they would have traveled in a circle." "I thought that you'd go straight to Chang'an," said Shen Qiao. "After entering Chang'an, you'd have Huan Yue Sek's influence and the Lord of Shou's protection. Then Shu Ting wouldn't dare do anything rash." Yan Wushi said, "Since Shu Ting already knows I'm alive, even if the others don't yet, they will in a few days. If you thought of returning to Chang'an, they definitely thought of it as well. The road we'd have to take from here to Chang'an will definitely be full of countless ambushes and hurdles." Said Shen Qiao. He also thought of this much. Yan Wushi sneered. "Shu Ting and the rest wanted to kill me, but did you really think I was their only target?" So the Gates of Life reference is traditionally used to refer to an important acupoint on the lower back, but here it means one of a series of vital acupoints that connects to the owner's life. "Their true target should be the Lord of Shou." "Correct," said Yan Wushi. "As I said before, the Buddhists wish to expand their influence, which can only be done through a ruler, so they absolutely must not stain their hands with regicide. Otherwise, even if Yuan Yang is gone, regardless of who the future emperor is, they won't uplift Buddhism. And if they had the likes of the Gok Turks, Liu He Guild, or Fa Jing sect do it, not only would the action be seen as unjustified and unreasonable, it'd also bring them countless troubles. It'd be faster to let the people close to Yuan Yang take action." Yan Wushi's words were like a flash of lightning. They illuminated something that had never occurred to Shen Qiao. "The Empress Lady Ashina is a Gok Turk." "My, what a quick learner you are," teased Yan Wushi. "Lady Ashina has been neglected by Yuan Yang for a long time. Naturally, she'd be willing to help Yuan Yang and add fuel to the fire. There's also the Crown Prince. He hates work and loves play. He spends all day amusing himself and never strives for improvement. The Emperor has long been dissatisfied with him, and the Crown Prince knows this as well. If he doesn't act first before his father decides to depose him, he won't be able to keep his seat as crown prince. Shen Qiao was shocked. After a long pause, he finally said, "The crown prince is his son. He wouldn't go that far." Halfway through his sentence, he found himself unable to continue. Shen Qiao suddenly thought of Yui. Could the affection they'd shared be much less than that of the familial bond between the emperor and the crown prince? But Yui had still mercilessly poisoned him with joyful reunion. Royal families had always been framed for their ruthlessness. The crown prince really might be capable of patricide. Yan Wushi sighed. "Ah, Qiao, you're not stupid, but your tender heart holds you back. You're always so optimistic when it comes to interpersonal matters, and you never suspect a dark side to them. What would you do if I weren't here?" "If you weren't here, my days would definitely go 100 times more smoothly," Shen Qiao almost blurted out. But he was a kind and upright gentleman, so he couldn't say such things. Instead, he turned his attention back to the original topic. Following their conjectures, it seemed that this game of chess was truly fraught with danger, and everything was deeply intertwined. After what had happened to Yan Wushi, Huan Yue's sect was without a leader. The other two demonic sects would be unable to contain themselves and come looking for trouble. Bianyan Mei would be pressed to take care of himself and was sure to overlook things on Yuanyang's end. The Empress was his wife and the Crown Prince was his son. No matter how capable Bianyan Mei was, he couldn't accompany the Emperor at all times. If they wanted to do something to him, that something would indeed be simpler and easier to pull off than having martial artists assassinate him. Shen Qiao coughed twice. "Then what of Han Shang? The Prince of Qi, Yuan Xian, lives in Han Shang. He also has some troops. We'll go there first to scope out the situation, then head to Chang'an." Shen Qiao understood. Yan Wushi thought Yuanyang's situation didn't look too good, so he was planning out a path of retreat in advance. The Crown Prince was Buddhist and had no fondness for Huan Yue's sect, nor Yan Wushi for the prince, so he decided to bet on Yuan Xian. Even before now, Huan Yue's sect must have invested a great deal of time into him. Xu Ting thought that they'd head for Chang'an, and everyone else would think so as well. Probably no one would expect that they'd instead go to Hangshang. The crafty hare keeps 3 burrows. Nobody understood this concept better than Yan Wushi. Nights seemed to come quicker in the mountains. As the sun set in the west, the densely packed canopy of leaves above them absorbed the last rays of sunlight. Inside the cave, the firewood crackled along, finally driving away the spring night's chill. Shen Qiao didn't circulate his qi. Instead, he slept. He'd been wounded quite seriously in his battle with Xu Ting. Even with the Shu Yang strategy's true qi protecting him, he was still a flesh and blood mortal, and at present there was a fair gap between him and Xu Ting. It was impossible for his injuries to heal in a couple of days. At night, he burned with fever, his forehead boiling hot as he descended into a nightmare. His dreams were fantastical and bizarre, with all sorts of people making their appearances. Shen Qiao was trapped in this illusion, unable to free himself. The shizun he had admired the most was holding Shan He Tongbei, which was also covered in feathers. He asked Ah Qiao why he'd used the sword to clean away feathers, and Shen Qiao said, "Hurt. Shizun, Yan Wushi did it." Qi Fengui gripped Shen Qiao's chin and held the sword up to his face. "What else do you see here?" Shen Qiao stared blankly, then discovered that the blade was covered in tiny black hairs. He immediately blurted, "Shizun, do you really use Shan He Tongbei to shave?" Nonsense, said Shi Fingwei angrily. You clearly took this master's sword to play with, and now you're blaming someone else. It was only yesterday that I just taught you the character for honesty. You should know better, but now you've gone and done this. It seems you must be punished. Frightened, Shen Qiao subconsciously blurted out, This disciple knows he was wrong. But Qi Fingwei didn't seem to have heard him admit his wrongdoings. Instead, he ordered him to lie down, then picked up a large rock and placed it on top of him. Since you were wrong, you must be punished. Stay here like this. You're not allowed to stand unless this master says so. Shen Qiao didn't know how his master had come up with such a bizarre punishment. His chest felt both stifled and painful from the pressure, and he could barely breathe. He couldn't help but hurriedly plead, Shizun, please move the stone away. But Qi Fingwei turned a deaf ear before turning around and leaving. He grew farther and farther away until he finally vanished without a trace. This disciple was wrong. Shizun, don't go! Shen Qiao's eyes were shut, his eyebrows tightly knitted. My chest hurts. Hearing his murmurs, Yan Wushi opened his eyes and looked down at him. Beneath the firelight, he saw faint tear tracks at the corners of his eyes. He'd actually cried within his dream. Yan Wushi reached out and touched the wet stains. He'd thought the fresh tears would be warm, but instead they were ice cold. This person must have been pampered and doted on as a child, otherwise he couldn't have developed such a soft and tender heart. As Yan Wushi thought about this, he heard Shen Qiao, who was within some fretful dream, suddenly mutter two words. Shai Ling. Yan Wushi startled, then a strange cruelty rose to his face, as if a mask had suddenly broken. Very quickly, all sorts of emotions flashed across his face, some savage, some estranged, some gentle, as though tens of thousands of faces were fighting for dominance, wanting to take control of his expression. It was a chilling sight. The qi within his body began to rampage, much like the warning signs for the countless times he'd entered qi deviation. Yan Wushi quickly shut his eyes. After a moment, he opened them again, reaching down to carefully stroke Shen Qiao's cheek. Then his hand meandered to the back to grasp his nape, pulling him up a little. Finally, he lowered his own head and swallowed each one of those incessant murmurs, taking them into his mouth. And that is where we're going to leave it for this week. Okay, to be fair, this author pretty much does nothing but leave cliffhangers, so you can't really blame me for ending there. And yes, Yan Wushi is totally about to traumatize him. If he hasn't already, let's be real. But, as I said before, we will continue this on Monday. And then we'll finish this on Tuesday. I will post that schedule up tonight. But see you all next week. Have a fantastic weekend. Anyone who's watching this later, I hope you had a fantastic evening and have a great day. Good night and goodbye.